So, the CEL Robox is by far the printer with the largest amount of innovative new features out right now. But can that be enough to actually make it an awesome machine? Let's find out. On first sight, the Robox doesn't look that different from other consumer 3D printers. It's a medium-sized machine with a 210 by 150 by 100 mm or 8 by 6 by 4 inches build space. It's got a black aluminum frame with a few transparent bits and a hinged door on the front, and a spool of filament neatly stowed away in the side of the printer. And this is where the innovation begins. The filament intended for the Robox comes in what they call smart reels. A 600-gram spool with some rewritable memory that stores the exact type of filament, what printing parameters should be used, and how much of the reel you've already used up. Which means that with all the official smart reel filament from the Robox ecosystem, you get a nearly plug-and-play experience without having to fiddle with temperature, speed and cooling settings. That has all been done for you already. Currently, you can get the common filaments PLA, ABS, as well as HIPS and ColorFab XT, a type of PET, which is becoming quite popular lately. You can also use almost any type of filament like nylon from standard spools, but flexible filaments are out of reach, as well as some of the high temperature plastics like polycarbonate, since the hot end will not get hot enough for those, even though CEL advertised the Robox as being able to print polycarbonate, but apparently that only applies to a few special low temperature blends. Further down the filament path, loading and unloading filament has also been greatly simplified. To load filament, all you need to do is grab the end of the filament and push it into the appropriate feed hole next to the spool mount. That's it. No preheating, unhinging the extruder parts, or trying to guide the filament into tiny orifices somewhere on the printer. To unload, there's a big glowing button in the center of the smart reel mount. Just hold that for a second and the printer will warm up and rewind the filament until you can simply pull it out. I think that is very well implemented, and even though loading the filament occasionally took me 2 tries for the printer to properly grab on, it is still much simpler than on any other printer I've tried so far. And lastly, on the other end of the filament path, you're always going to get a pair of nozzles, which seems strange for a printer with only a single filament feed. In the dual extruder and dual filament version, you get 2 identical nozzles, one for each filament, to print parts in 2 colors, 2 materials, or with a separate dissolvable support material. This is the same way any other dual extruder printer does it. However, in the single extruder and single filament version, you get 2 differently sized nozzles fed from the same filament stock. The idea is to make your prints finish faster without sacrificing on quality too much, but as it turns out, the larger nozzle is only used for the lowest of print qualities, draft, and is completely unused in the normal and fine settings. Speaking of print quality, the Robox has an above average print quality, but there are a few hiccups that keep it from being truly outstanding. While vertical surfaces are mostly consistent and smooth, with layers barely visible on the fine print settings, horizontal top surfaces often turn out inconsistently with an incomplete fill at any quality settings. All these prints were done with the default profiles for draft, normal and fine. The green ones were done with the included ColorFab XT filament, while the brown one was a test print with dust filament PLA and the black one using ESUN ABS. It's interesting to note that the profiles used were the ones intended for the CEL filaments, which you can copy and use for non-smart reel plastics as well. And this brings us around to the automaker software, which I think is both the strongest and weakest point of the Robox. It does enable all of the intelligent features around the smart reels and is generally your one-stop shop for anything from running diagnostics on the Robox to slicing and printing your files. At its core, it's based around the Cura and Slick3R engines and wraps a nice interface around them that is tailor-made for this very printer. To get a printout, it walks you through 3 basic screens. The first one being a status overview, showing what filament is loaded and if anything on the printer needs your attention. The next one allows you to fill the build plate with printable designs. Then you get to choose your print settings and finally start the print. Should there be anything that needs to be done before the print can start, like purging old filament from the extruder, the software will prompt you to do just that and give you the necessary instructions. But also, the Automaker firmware in general doesn't feel particularly well made and polished yet. Sure, the basic functionality is there, and as long as everything's going smoothly, there's really no reason to complain. But it's just not robust enough when you can very easily or accidentally trick the printer into printing with the door wide open, which the safety features being turned on should have prevented. Also, the purge process frequently failed because Automaker doesn't actually prevent you from doing other stuff while it's doing that. The smart reel that came with the printer always showed zero material left, which is something you can work around by reprogramming the smart reel, but you shouldn't have to do that. Still, if you try to create custom filament profiles for filaments without a smart reel, those would also disappear from the list of options after just a single print. And also, the general workflow and interface of Automaker doesn't feel all that intuitive yet, but sure, other examples of control software aren't much better either. Still, in general, if you're looking for an experience that is a whole lot easier than other, more bare-bones printers and don't mind staying within that Robox ecosystem for filaments, you're probably going to have a good time with the Robox. It prints decently well and doesn't lock you down as much as other options that use a closed ecosystem like the Cubify printers. The bugs in the Robox's software are nothing compared to the issues you might run into with a fully custom printer, but it would still be nice to see them fixed.